How is everybody doing? Good. Well, welcome to our Friday's virtual meetings for the after school and out of school time. So I'm going to pass the mic to Lexi. She's going to share what we are doing today.
Hello, everybody. Yes, and like Paula said, welcome to our OST meeting. This is actually the last one of this year. So the meeting topic today is being intentional about social and emotional learning in after school. So in just a minute, we will hear from Cam on social and emotional learning in after school. And then at 11 o'clock, Danielle from the Coalition for Drug-Free Hawaii will share a bit about their online lending library. So if you have a few minutes after the hour, please be sure to stick around for that. But before we get going, we have a couple quick announcements for you all today. So on Tuesday, a report from America After 3 p.m., which is a national household survey commissioned by the After School Alliance, was released. And in this report, unfortunately, Hawaii is no longer a top 10 state for after school. But one of the reasons for this drop in ranking is due to the unmet demand for programs. And so this unmet demand is the percent of parents who say their children would be enrolled in an after-school program if one were available to them. Families, particularly low-income families, will cite cost as a barrier for enrolling their children in after school. However, it wasn't all bad news. Parent satisfaction was at an all-time high, with 99% of parents reporting that they are satisfied with their program. So cheers to all of you guys for making that happen. You can explore more in the report and compare Hawaii to other states' data. And I believe Jen is dropping the link in the chat to explore the report more fully if you would like. And as we mentioned, it is our last OST meeting for this year. Starting in the new year, we will be switching to bi-weekly community meetings. So we will be having meetings every other Friday starting January 15th. Some of the topics that we have been working on for the new year include community schools, talking about racial equity, and how we can best support our Micronesian students and families. And with that, I will pass it to Paula.
Thank you, Lexi. So yes, Lexi mentioned this is our last Friday meeting for this year, and we would like to say happy holidays to all of you. I know 2020 has been hard, but we are still working and we are still supporting our kids and families. And if you're working directly with kids and youth, please make sure that you let them have some time to share how they are feeling about the holidays. This holiday season is going to be different than any other holiday season. You know, we are following safety and healthy protocols, so we are encouraging people to have small gatherings, or you know, just with very, you know, with your household people. So the likely for the virus to be transmitted is less than if we gather with a lot of people. But saying that, I wish you all very, very happy holidays, and I hope you have a good one, and we'll see you after this meeting next year. Lexi, thank you.
And with that, we would like to welcome Cam Green, Chief Learning Officer and founder of Rethink After School. Cam has over 15 years of experience in education, from after-school programming, teaching, curriculum design, writing, and a background in performing arts. She trains and educates with a high-energy program that will leave her lucky participants with loads of content, motivation, and even some fun new dance moves. In addition to teaching and training, Kim is also a children's book author, has contributed articles to Edutopia and Hawaii Parent Magazine. In 2017, she became a master trainer for the American Red Cross of Hawaii, where she trains on cultural competency, teamwork, and other priority topics. Additionally, Cam is a member of the Association of Talent Development and a certified Zumba instructor. In 2018, she was nominated and selected to be part of the 7th class of White Riley Peterson Policy Fellows. She has chosen to focus her policy project on a topic that is very important to her, social and emotional learning. Her life motto, "Get up and thrive," is at the core of everything she does. And today we are lucky to have her here with us. So with that, I will pass the mic to Cam.
Thank you. I was like, wow, that's kind of awesome. You know, when you hear other people say stuff about you, you're like, you know what, I'm not half bad, huh? So good morning, good afternoon for some of you, depending on where you are in the world. I am in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it is currently noon here. I used to live in Hawaii for a couple of years, and that's where I had the opportunity to meet and work with Paula and the Hawaii After School Alliance and other after school programs there. And it was an amazing opportunity. So I'm happy to be here with you this morning. And we are going to be morning or afternoon talking about being intentional about social emotional learning. So what I'm going to be sharing with you all, some of it is not going to be, you know, rocket science or new data, but it's really going to just be an opportunity for us to connect and for us to think about being intentional about social emotional learning. So let's get started. So here's a quote here. Social emotional learning is a critical cornerstone in every child's success. How many of you all agree with that? Give me a TU in the chat. That stands for thumbs up. So social emotional learning is a critical cornerstone in every child's success. I think though it's safe to say that we all can agree with that, and that's probably one of the reasons why we are here. Before we get started, just for those people who may not be aware, I know our levels of understanding of social emotional learning are all different. Some of us have, you know, sort of a general background. We know what's important. We know that it deals with social skills, but just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page, I did want to start off with introducing some of the core competencies behind social emotional learning. And all this information that I'm sharing is going to be shared out. I'll share out my PowerPoint with Paula so that she can share with you all. So any information that you find useful, you can also look at later. So here we have the 5 competencies: self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness, and self-management, okay? And these core competencies have been developed by the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. So lots of actual, you know, academic research data has gone into this over the years. I started out my work in social emotional learning in 2000 and maybe 4 or 5. And I actually had the opportunity to work with an organization called Wings for Kids. And they were getting started out really doing some amazing work in after school, in out of school time around social emotional learning. All of their work was focused on how to build capacities around social emotional learning and using the after school time for that. So I'm very fortunate to have started that off. You know, doing that years and years ago is something that's very important to me and something I've continued. So I always like to, anytime I'm doing a training or anytime I'm working with students, I like to do a check-in. I think check-ins are so important and they're so crucial. You heard Paula say, make sure you check in with your students about how they're feeling about the holidays and things like that. As we kind of sometimes feel hurried and we feel like we have a lot of things to get into on our agenda, or even when we're hopping into online things, sometimes we don't take those pauses. So I want to start off with a check-in, and this is a part of being intentional, you know, in after school. So this is a game I like to play with my kids, my students, even my adult learners when I'm doing this. And it's called Let's Play. I Get Angry, Sad, When, okay? So what I want you all to think about, especially those people who are working directly with students, or even if you have kids, do you give your students a space to express anger and sadness? So do you give your students a space to express anger and sadness? Social emotional learning is more than just giving them the tools and helping them to be okay, but it's also giving them the space to express all their emotions. I think a lot of times we get into a space where, of course, we want our kids to be happy. Of course, we want our kids to be positive, but we also don't want them to suppress their emotions. So we need to get all that stuff out, okay? We need to get all that stuff out. So let's go ahead and just do a quick check-in in the chat and let's share. So I get angry, sad, when. You can be, you know, kind of surface level with it. You can be, you know, maybe it's something at home, maybe it's something at work, depending on your level of engagement. But let's all share something in the chat. So I get angry, sad, when, and this is something that you could do with your students to promote that communication, to promote that sharing. And then also, of course, you know, you would want to share as well to promote that. When I spill my coffee in the morning, I get angry when people talk to me in a condescending tone. When you see disrespect, yes. When your kids forget to clean up after themselves. Hi, Bridget. Oh my goodness, that is a huge one, especially if we have kids now who are learning remotely. I'm like, how does the house just keep in a cycle of dirtiness? When you get hungry, so Lexi has the hangry term when she gets hungry. When you don't feel appreciated, you get sad when you don't feel appreciated or so underappreciated. That seems to be a common one. Getting furloughed, lost your position, overwhelmed. These are all great things. And maybe you haven't said this. Maybe you haven't expressed this. Maybe you've been kind of keeping it to yourself, and maybe you haven't shared it in an open forum. So it's nice sometimes to just say it, to get it out, okay? I get angry when this happens. I get sad when this happens. But there's that piece of it. So us sharing it out. And then we as leaders, we as teachers, we as people who are working with our students, we need to let them know too. Okay, we need to let them know too. One of my kids said maybe a month or so ago, and they're like, well, Mom, you don't get, I've never seen you get sad, or I've never seen you, you don't need help. And so I had to sit them down and walk them through, like, I get sad, I need help. And I walk them through some times where it's happened. I've walked them through some of the resources that I use. So our kids need to see that we're not robots. Our kids need to see that we struggle with these things too. So when we do a conversation like this and we start a conversation like this, it's always nice to start off saying, things that we can share with our students. So this is when I get angry. This is when I get sad. So they can see, oh, it happens to you. Even though you're teaching us about these things, you're not immune to having that kind of emotion. And again, it's not about just saying we want our kids to be happy all the time. We want our kids to be positive. It's about acknowledging whatever kind of emotion, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the fear, and then saying, now what? So now what? So now you've expressed this, this is what happens, so now what? That's the social emotional learning piece. It's getting it out there and then figuring out where to go next. So I like to do this one as a check-in. If you've never done something like this, you can consider some kind of statement, and again, engage in it, yourself by answering the question. That helps for that transparency. So the next thing I want us to think about, because the title of this workshop is being intentional, what does intentional mean to you? So when we say being intentional, what does that word mean to you? Oops, let's go back to my slide. So what does being intentional mean to you when you hear that? Purposeful, having a clear purpose, setting specific goals, done on purpose and with thought, having a rhyme or reason, right? Having a plan for results, exactly. So when we talk about being intentional with social emotional learning, it's just that. It's that every time that you meet or you connect with a student, that you have that in your mind, you have that as a part of your plan. And it doesn't matter what kind of activity you're doing. It doesn't matter if it's something fun. It doesn't matter if it's something, homework related or something like that. How can I be intentional and pull out that social emotional learning? How can I say, this is what they could potentially gain from this. This is something they could potentially take away. That's the intentional piece. It's not necessarily a specific set of activities all the time, but it's, we're doing this. How does social emotional learning connect to it? How can we build social skills while we're doing this? That's the intentional piece. So it might not be that you have to go out and create all these new things. You may be doing a lot of these things, but we can always be more intentional by connecting that, calling that out, and making those connections. Thank you all for sharing those out in the chat. All right, here's another check-in that I like to do called emotional roller coaster, okay? And my kids love to do this, my kids at home, but thinking about checking in, asking your kids how they're feeling, okay? One of the things you could do is you can have the students close their eyes and raise their hands when you say an emotion that they felt today. So sometimes we know that working with students, they kind of are creatures of, well, what is my friend doing, or what is my friend saying? And maybe they feel a little bit vulnerable. So to promote that, safe environment, you could have them just close their eyes and say, sit, I'm gonna yell out emotion, and I'm gonna say, today I felt angry, and I want you to throw your hand up. And then you as the leader, you would just be kind of taking account, like, oh, I see lots of hands, don't open your eyes, encouraging them to do that, but it also encouraging them to be able to say, hey, I felt this way. right? Hey, I felt angry. Hey, I felt sad. Hey, I felt frustrated. Hey, I felt happy. Hey, I felt in control. But it's another great way to do a check-in. It's something different, especially when we're online. As much as we think our kids love to be on the computer, we're starting to see now that idea of Zoom fatigue and meeting fatigue. So being able to give them a moment where they can kind of shut down and go away, you know, and be to themselves, but still participate is a great way to check in and to engage. So that's another little quick game that I like to play for check-ins. So here's the thing about being intentional, is that sometimes all it takes is, go back to my slide, is naming it. So sometimes all it takes is naming it. When we think about social emotional learning, we have to make sure that we're naming it as a skill to our students. And then also with, you know, depending on the age group, superpower, superhero goes over with some of the younger kids better than the high school kids. But naming it as a skill. So we're teaching them math, we're teaching them reading, we're teaching them science. Are we letting them know that social emotional learning is a skill? Are we saying that's amazing that you've conquered this skill? Are we saying, you know, this skill is going to be something that helps you in life? Are we acknowledging the fact that a student has managed their anger? Are we acknowledging the fact that a student has shared an emotion, or they were brave enough to say, I feel angry when? I think a part of being intentional is making sure that we continue to name it. We continue to name it as a skill. And I think we've come so far with the work with social emotional learning, and we've seen so many people naming it. We're seeing so many more people talk about it. And so that's great. Now we just have to make sure that conversation is shared with the students and that they're in the loop. You have gained a new skill. You have gained a new superpower by engaging in this social emotional learning space. And we want to make sure that they feel that way. All right, let's do our first activity. So if you don't have paper or anything like that, that's fine. I am gonna do it over here. If you do have paper and you wanna you can go ahead and do it. Otherwise, you can just read the instructions as I go over them and know that it's a possibility of something you can do. So this activity is called about the circle of control, right? And this is a hot topic right now because we are all at a lack of control. We are all at the mercy of something that we have never seen before, and everybody's feeling it, right? Everybody's feeling it. Another one of those things, we have to name it, we have to acknowledge it, sometimes we have to put it on paper. So the circle of control is you draw a circle on a piece of paper, okay? And you're creating a piece of artwork with this, something that they can hang up in their homes or hang up, wherever their space where they're learning as a reminder. Inside the circle, you're going to draw and write down the things you can control, okay? So if you're doing this, you can go ahead and draw your circle and write down some of the things inside the circle that you can control. Outside the circle, you or the students would draw things they cannot control. So things that are outside of them circumstances, like COVID-19, okay, would definitely be out there, right? The weather, might definitely be out there. Other people's actions are something, these are some of the things that I'm writing down on mine. Actions, like my kids not cleaning up after themselves. This can actually be a very calming experience because it kind of puts things into perspective when they write it down. What the things that you can control are confined to this circle, and they're confined to this space right here. These are the things that I actually can do something about. These things out here, I haven't written anything in the middle, but these things out here I can't control. So giving them that visual space where they can see, you know what? We can't control everything, and then have an opportunity to also share it. So when we think about being in a virtual space, they can go off and do this activity. You can give them maybe a couple minutes to work on it, and then say for the people who want to share, you can come back and share out. They can actually read it, or they can just, show it in the screen and bring it back. And then you can encourage them to keep that somewhere. We need constant reminders, not just as, children, but as adults, to understand that we cannot control everything. And again, I think this is one of those times where even where people felt like they were more in control up until 2019 hit, we're all in the space where we've seen that. So it's sort of a calming experience to see, hey, take a breath. These are the things that I can control. These are the things that I'm going to focus on. And everything else out here, I'm not going to let these things be overwhelming factors. I'm going to focus in on my inner circle. I'm going to focus in on my circle of control. So I think this is a great activity to do, you know, even for yourselves, with your families, even with your staff, if you're working in a capacity like that, just to give you some perspective. And it could be something you do week to week. It could be something you do month to month, because obviously these things change. But it's a good way of, you know, checking in, and a good way to check in. Thanks, Susan. I hope that, yeah, you can share it, and I hope you find it, you know, to be effective. I like it. And I always tell people another activity that I do is comparing like showers and storms. So what are your showers and what are your storms? And sometimes just getting it out of your brain and onto paper helps you to look at it in a different way. So I'm glad that that was useful, or it's going to be useful to you. All right. So when I think about social emotional learning, one of the things that I think about is self-talk. Okay, so we talked about those core competencies, but one of the most important things is we share out all these things with kids. We tell them, here are the resources and here are the things that you need to do. And a lot of times when we're with them, we see them doing it. We see them engaging, and we see them, you know, they're good. But when they get by themselves, when they're, and it could be when they're, you know, doing math work, when they're doing reading, or maybe they're struggling with, you know, someone having a rough conversation, that's when it really is like, okay, you know, what am I going to do? And I noticed that a lot of kids, they struggle with self-talk. So what am I going to say to myself when I'm alone? What am I going to say to myself when there's nobody there to kind of support me? So here we have an anchor chart here that was done, and it just gives some examples of things that you can say to help students frame their self-talk. So help students frame their self-talk. So instead of saying, I'm not good at this, consider saying, what am I missing? And I'm not going to go over all of these. I'll just pull a few out. Instead of saying, this is too hard, say, this may require some more effort. Because again, we won't always be there to hold their hands. We won't always be there right with them. Even if they're in a group with us, they could be working on their own. We need to make sure that we're equipping them, we're empowering them with their own tools, to be able to say, hey, I'm stuck. Hey, I feel angry. Hey, I'm upset. Hey, I'm nervous. So what are you going to say back to yourself? What are you going to, you know, say back to yourself? So I'm a huge advocate of self-talk. And I think it's such an important component of social emotional learning, and that you help kids to develop their own sort of self-talk so that they can have those resources, right? So one of the activities you can do to be intentional about self-talk is creating positive self-talk tools, okay? So another little activity that we'll work through, just using paper, we're using very simple things, is creating, I like to create self-talk things, self-talk phrases, and then sometimes put them on popsicle sticks. For this workshop, if you don't have a popsicle stick, you know, of course that's fine, but just simple, taking a piece of paper, having them folded into, you know, maybe 4 pieces, maybe have them cut some circles and say, hey, we're gonna come up with some self-talk phrases. We're gonna come up with some phrases that you can say to yourself when you get stuck, when you get frustrated, when you get upset. They can cut the paper, they can cut those phrases out and put them in different places. They could put them on popsicle sticks and have them, you know, in different places. You can make them as leaders and teachers and hold them up, you know, while you're in class. If you see somebody needs something, like, yep, you got this, or, you know, keep going. I know it's hard, but you can do it. Those kind of things. So what I want to do really quickly in the chat is I want us to share the next activity I'm going to hopefully make all of us do together, but I want to share in the chat, what are some of your go-to self-talk phrases, either that you encourage kids to say or that you say to yourself? What are some of your go-to self-talk phrases? So I've been hearing this one, and I say it all the time. You got this. It's simple, but you know, I think it drives the point home. Right, Kim, right? That's a good one. It's like, it's such a quick thing, and it's such a quick reminder. This won't last forever. That's a great one. You got this, points to self. That's keep swimming, Finding Nemo, Finding Dory. It is what it is. Sometimes it's that circle of control. You can't do anything about it. I am loved. I am able. Keep striving. Imagine pouring this into the kids daily. Imagine giving them these resources where they have it, where you're saying, hey, you know what, today we're going to just spend 5 minutes, making some self-talk phrases so that when you get stuck, you can have these reminders. Imagine pouring into them, weekly. Think you can, think you can, think you can. I love that one. Push through the hard now so that it can get, so it won't be so hard later. I haven't heard that one before. I like that one. I am patient with myself and others. That is so important. I think as humans in general, sometimes we lack patience with ourselves, but especially kids. They can try something one time, they get a new math problem or they get a new experience or a new, sport. And if they don't get it on the first time, then they're like, oh, I can't do it. I can't get it. I can't. That's when they need that self-talk. That's when they need to be able to look around the room and say, oh, you got this. It's okay, right? That's a very simple one, but a very, powerful one. So I think spending time after school, again, being intentional, just naming it. You're probably already doing this. You're probably already saying this, but just finding an activity that you can put the power into the students' hands where they can make something for themselves, where they can have a little reminder that says, okay, it's okay. Because sometimes that's really all you need. I love the power of yet. I love that one because that's the one that we hear students often say, I can't get it, I can't do this, da, da, da. And it's like, well, maybe you can't get it now. Maybe, it's not happening for you now, but think about the word yet instead of not at all. So I love that one. Thank you all for sharing out. Those were some great ones. Hopefully you were able to take some new ones away. I definitely saw some ones that I wasn't familiar with. So I'll be adding those to my tool belt and sharing those with my students and kids as well. My homeschool students, as I call them now. All right. This next activity, I would like for as many people as possible that have paper to actually try this and to actually go through this, okay? So what we're gonna do is we are going to draw. Who likes to draw? Sometimes drawing causes anxiety for people. I'm a terrible artist, and so I get that, but we're gonna draw. So I'm going to, can everybody see everybody's face or some faces on the screen? You can see my face, how about that? If you can't see somebody else's face. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna draw and we're gonna do some self-portraits or cam portraits. So if you can only see me, if you're not able to see other people. And I want you to draw your best cam. I would like very, detailed features. I have high cheekbones. My eyebrows are arched for the first time in forever. I'm kidding. But I do want everyone to draw. But here's the thing. We're gonna take, I'm gonna stop sharing this so I can actually come back. I'm gonna pause my share because I want to come back to the screen because I do want to see everybody. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna draw. We're gonna have about 30 to 45 seconds. You can choose somebody on the screen to draw. You can draw me. For those people who feel like I'm not really a great artist, that's okay. Do the best you can. But here's the thing. There's one rule. You cannot look at your paper. You can only look straight at the screen, and I'm gonna be watching intently. I'm like scrolling across, I'm gonna be watching everybody, okay? So find the person that you're drawing and draw that person and do not look at your paper. Don't do this, don't look out the corner of your eye. Try to keep yours right on the screen, and I'm gonna be watching people's eyes. Let me see. So you cannot look down at your paper. Is everybody ready? So find your person you're drawing and only look at them. Go. So you're only looking at them. I see somebody looking out the corner of their eye of their glasses. They think I can't see it with the glare. I can see you. I see you. So let's try to make as many features as possible. If they have arched eyebrows, give them arched eyebrows. If they have a mask on, I'm gonna try to draw a mask on my person. Let me see. Let's see. So only looking at the screen. I'm gonna draw a little earpiece. I see somebody with an earpiece in there. Let's see. What else there? I'm drawing a collective of lots of different people. So don't look at your paper. Let me see, I'm gonna do a little shading here with a little bit of the earring. We have about 5 more seconds. And let's see, I think I'm good. I think I'm done on mine. So take your last 5 seconds and draw, and then pencils down. Pencils down. All right, who's ready to share? Go ahead and put yours up. Go ahead and put yours up to the screen and share it. Let's see what we got. Oh, some of you guys are really good at drawing without looking. Mine was kind of a collective of different people, but you know, it worked out. How many people were stressed by that? Raise your hand. How many people were stressed by it when I said you couldn't look at your paper, right? It was all good until I said, don't look at your paper. You were like, what? I'm leaving this workshop right now. Somebody just left, like, no, she's crazy, right? So here's the thing. I like to do this activity, one, because again, there's some things that we cannot control, right? But two, there's some things that are not even that serious, but we make them more serious. Nobody is going to see this except for us. This is not going to have an effect on our lives. Nobody's going to get fired. Well, I don't know, unless you're an art major, maybe if it comes out a little sketchy. But the idea is that sometimes we have to do things and force ourselves into spaces that, oh, this feels a little crazy, but did it really matter? Is that really, you know, the most important thing? And so I like to do that activity to kind of shake people up a little bit and also think about what's the larger picture? What was the real end result, you know, of this? Was I able to relinquish control? How many of you all looked? Let's be honest. How many of y'all looked out of the corner of your eye? Go ahead. You're like, I can't quite release. I have to have the eyes right next to each other. And it's one of those things. We want to have control. We want to get it right. We want to do it right. The idea that we're doing something and we can't see it, or the idea that it's not going to work out, it creates this sort of fear and anxiety that cripples us, right? So imagine that in a child. Imagine that in a teenager, in a COVID environment. Imagine what they feel like kind of driving through this. So this is a great activity to think about. It's okay. You know, it's okay. We did this. You had to release a little bit. You couldn't look at your paper. You were frustrated, but you made it through. You drew the picture. It wasn't the greatest, but you know, it was okay. So this is a great activity to kind of talk about that. Also to consider, you know, resiliency and things like that. You can decide, you can determine, you know, what you want to do with it and where you want to go with it, you know, with your students. So you could take that topic anywhere. You could take that drawing activity and add anything, you know, that you wanted. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Give me a second. There we go. So yeah, so if you've never done that before, it's called a couple different versions of it. And again, I'll share this slide, but blind drawing, you know, is one of them. But you can consider what's most important for your population. And then you can also maybe do one at the beginning of a month and then try again later to see how their skills improve. But it's really more about that relinquishing of that control, understanding that, you know, you'll make it through fear and anxiety and you'll be okay on the other side. And that's a part of that, building that resiliency piece. Yes, you can go through something that felt a little traumatizing, but in the end, you may actually be able to smile and, you know, laugh at it. So we talked about naming it earlier. I talked about the importance of being intentional and just naming the skill. So just saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Right now, you're building resiliency. Hey, right now you're building, you know, a growth mindset. So naming those skills. After we name those skills, especially for our older students, so when we think about our middle school students and our high school students, it's so important to make that connection. So it's so important to make that connection. So I want to take a quick moment in the chat, and I want us all to share out. Think about some of the social emotional learning skills that you've engaged with. Think about some of the things that you've worked with your students on. How has that transferred into, you know, let's say the real world? How has that transferred into something at work? How has that transferred into something with your family? So let's just share that out. So for me, I'm going to share out having a growth mindset, and it transfers over to work because I'm constantly having to learn new things. Okay. So when we name these things, like typing and talking. When we name these things and when we help these students understand that this transfers over into this can, you know, help you in this situation, it really helps them to make those connections. Now more than ever, we have seen, fortunately, more connections. Okay, I do corporate training and I actually been training for CVS Health. And one of the things that I'm constantly being asked to do is train on soft skills, because the technical skills, most people can get that. right? Yep, managing emotions. Most people can get those technical skills, they can sit down and do it. But what companies are finding is when it's time to work together as a team, it's not working out. When it's time to say, you know what, everybody has to go home and you have to work online, people are having breakdowns because they're not able to process those emotions. When people are saying, you know, hey, we need you to step into a different position, or hey, we need to have you step, you know, do something you weren't supposed to do, they're met with such conflict and they're met with such resistance because those social emotional skills aren't there. So now in more companies, more than ever, you're going to see a lot of times they'll call it emotional intelligence. They're starting to use the social emotional learning terminology more, which is great because that's a good connection. It's there. So you can tell them these things that you're learning, these are job building skills. These are no longer soft skills. These are solid, hard skills that will build a solid foundation. And you can even pull up job applications and not job applications, job descriptions that say, we want team players. We want people with growth mindsets. We want people who can, change quickly. So we can start to make those connections, especially for our older students again. So those middle and high school students who might say, well, you know, why do I have to learn this? This can help you get a job. This can help you keep a job. This can help you be elevated at your job because you're more likely to be able to work with people. And soft skills is a hot item to have right now. If you have strong soft skills, these companies are looking for that. These companies are elevating and promoting people who know how to communicate, people who have positive self-talk and sort of talk people down. So tell them that it's a marketable skill. So if they don't buy in on the other stuff, if they don't want to get along with people, tell them those soft skills can help them make money. Okay, so you can make that transferable that way. Tania, so always thinking of what is wanted instead of what is not wanted helps the children or other staff see why actions are not appropriate for that moment and to modify quicker in any situation. Great call out with that. Tasa says being mindful, remembering is not just me or even about others. There needs to be a balance. And that's such an amazing, thing in life in general, when we're in school settings. And then when we think about that transfer in the work setting, we have to be mindful of others. We're working with people. And now more than ever, people are working with people all over the world. There are teams that are collaborating that wouldn't have normally collaborated, given, what's going on with the pandemic. Another thing that I love to do is the drama in me, the actor and the actress, is doing, role play things. Okay. So having students consider, actually walking through situations, and here that piece is again, recognizing and naming emotional triggers. So recognizing and naming, and that takes us back to that first check-in. I get angry when, I get sad when. If we have allowed them to acknowledge those triggers, if we have allowed them to acknowledge those things that happen to them, that's going to put them better in the driver's seat. So another activity you can do with your students is have them to do some role play. Everybody doesn't like to do role play. Everybody doesn't like to do skits. We know it. When you start talking about doing skits and stuff like that, you might get moans and things like that. So maybe you'll have a couple of volunteers that want to be engaged in that, and maybe you'll have to be one of the people as a leader. But it's a great opportunity to walk through a scenario and say, okay, have them pause. What went wrong here? And then have them go through it. Okay, stop. What went right here? Okay, so giving these different scenarios, giving these different role plays that you can go through and having them look at it like, oh, okay, well, if I had said this, and I do that all the time with my kids when they're starting to escalate, my kids at home, and I'm like, stop, before you continue. If you continue down this path, where is it going to end? Like they're already here. I'm like, if you continue down this path, where is it going to end? And I'm stopping them and I'm talking them through. Okay, you're going to get more mad. You're going to say something you shouldn't. Mom is going to punish you. Then you're going to not be able to play your video game. Is that where you want to go? So stop right now. Let's back it up. What can we do instead? Sometimes you have to teach them and help them walk through stopping in your tracks, recognizing those emotional triggers, and playing out the end outcome. A lot of times when it comes to social emotional learning and social skills, it's a lack of knowledge, but then it's also a lack of preparation. They're not prepared. They don't have that positive self-talk. They haven't identified some of the things that make them sad and upset, and they haven't actually talked through the outcome. I always tell my kids and my students, I'm like, if you're doing what you need to do and you are, checking off your chores and stuff like that, then that's, mom can't say anything to you. Miss Cam can't say anything to you. And I'm just like, the only thing I can say is, oh, you're great. You're positive. You're doing what you need to do. And they're always like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, I'm only correcting you because you're going the wrong way. So I'm like, if you want less correction from me, that's where we're going to put you in the driver's seat so you can do some of that self-correction. So role play is always a good activity. Again, it's not always a fan favorite, depending on the age group. And so you have to consider your group, and maybe you'll have a couple people who want to engage and the other people can just walk, and maybe they can be the people who pause and things like that. So that's another way to engage. I'm not really checking my time here, which I want to do that real quick, because sometimes I get carried away. What time do I have? A timekeeper over here. What time do I have? Oh, okay, I'm good.
You have about 20 more minutes.
Okay, I'm doing good. Okay, so one of the things that I did want to talk to, and we're kind of coming to the end of this, and then we'll have some opportunity to, kind of talk and share out on the chat and maybe share experiences, is this beating online fatigue. Obviously, we're in a space, now where everybody is online more often than they ever thought they would be, more often than they care to be. So one of the things that we need to think about, especially in this after school space, if you're doing virtual programming, they've been online all day. And then you come and you're like, hey, get online for another 2 hours, get online for another 3 hours. So because we work in after school space and out of school times, sometimes that gives flexibility to do different things and different programs, but we still have to deal with some of the same things that they're dealing with during school. We still have to find ways to engage them, and we still have to find ways to get around these things. One of the things that is always my go-to with anybody I work with, if I don't know, I go directly to the people. So in this case, asking your kids, asking your students, asking your keiki, hey, in the check-in, what are some other options, or how do you think we can, shake this thing up online? What would you do? Because you would be amazed, and some of you, I'm sure you know that, of some of the ideas that you get with kids. When I build programs, especially for students, I never build a program out without some kind of input from kids. So don't feel like as a leader, or don't feel like someone, because you're working with youth and you're in the driver's seat, that you can't tap into your population to say, hey, what are you all doing during school? Or what kind of ideas do you have? Sometimes I've gotten some great ideas and some great games from kids to play. And I'm like, that was great, So tap into your kids and ask them, tap into your students and ask them about that. Have them close their eyes. This is such a simple thing. And it's so funny because even I have an 8-year-old, and sometimes I'll play peekaboo with him, and he's kind of like, Mom, what are you doing? But after I do it a few times, he's like cracking up laughing. So yes, it's kind of, silly. It's outpaced his age, but he gets to a point where this is silly, this is kind of ridiculous, yet it's a little bit fun. So something as simple as, you know what, we're going to close our eyes. Or if they don't want to close their eyes, we're going to turn around. You don't have to look at the screen. We're going to be here, but we don't have to look at each other. So giving them those options of doing that, giving them the options of turning off their camera, obviously, is one, or even putting, you can put a silly face up. We can make a stick figure, and you don't have to show us your face today. You can show us your feeling. So giving them those options of where they don't have to feel like they're always on, they're always, somebody's looking at them, or they always have to be looking at somebody, is definitely a hard space to be in. Music obviously is a great way to break up online fatigue, whether it's playing, music that you like, whether it's creating music together. Paula had some great music starting off today. It made me feel like I was in Hawaii. I have on my Aloha shirt. And so she definitely set that tone. That's a great way to connect with your students. So even when they're coming in, if you're doing things in a virtual space, come in and have a playlist going. Get them to share songs with you. Hey, you all, especially the older kids. Whenever I work with middle school and high school kids, I'm like, okay, what songs do you want? Let me find the versions. Let me find the appropriate versions, so that when I come in, I already have a way to connect with them. And then they're kind of like, okay, they're connecting in a different space. And it's not just me coming in saying, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do today. They're feeling good. Their mood is up. They're, dancing a little bit. And they also know that I took that time in a different way to connect with them, right? Another thing, beating online fatigue, make it a race. So if you're asking them to do something, or to do an activity. Obviously, we don't want to race with homework, but anything else that you're doing, have them turn off their camera, and then as they finish, turn your camera back on, and you can kind of record who came back on first. Or have them turn their camera off, and then have them turn their camera back on and say, if you're wearing blue, turn your camera on. If you're wearing yellow. So do different things where they're engaging with the camera in different ways, but it's not them just staring and sitting there, looking at you, especially if you're doing this in an after school space, when most of them have been on minimum of 4 hours, maybe 4.5 hours during the day. So there's different things you can do. There's different ways for you to engage with them. And then I think sometimes by the end of the day, depending on if you can get them to come off of mute, obviously doing that, sometimes they're tapped out on the chat, right? You would think they would love to do that. You think they would love to engage in the chat. You would think they would love to do, all that, but sometimes they're kind of tapped out on that. So thinking about different things you can do to have them, engage, other tools that you can have them build. Again, just simple things like a smiley face or a sad face, or, a thumbs up, or, whatever, or a clap, a snap, and things like that, as ways to acknowledge and to engage versus always having to share in the chat. Okay. So those are some of my ways that I think and that I use. So I would like for us to take an opportunity and share in the chat. Let me go back. What about you all? What are some good ways that you've either heard of or that you're thinking of that you feel like could be useful to this group here to beat that online fatigue, especially when we think about being the end of the day people? So they've already been, with someone all day, and now they got to come over to us and do some more online. What are some of your tips? Playing Simon Says. Good, I like that one. That's a nice little, a simple game that you can play. Improv games are awesome. Gimme, gimme, like a scavenger hunt. So getting up and kind of coming back and doing things. Take an actual lunch and have a conversation with colleagues. So actually physically stepping away. Some kind of physical movement, dance or Zumba, something really quickly. Yeah, and if they don't want to dance, you could have them, move their hands or something like that, or do something silly. Yoga stretches. Drop your favorite in the chat. That's always a good one. I find that sharing your favorite from preschool to adults, they like to do that. Also, show and tell has been, a big one that has been coming back around, that I've seen a lot of people do. So they, on maybe Thursdays, they have a group of people that get to share something special, bring a picture or share their favorite food. I just happen to have a jar of peanut butter here. I don't know why it's right here on my bookshelf, but that's my share. I looked over to the left. I was like, why is there a jar of peanut butter here? That's when you have your kids doing virtual learning, you see some interesting things. Breathing exercises are amazing, Paula. Thank you for that call out. Bring your animal or sibling to the program. I know students love to do that. So it's like, hey, let me share with you, especially when you're thinking about in a after school space, or even sharing a picture. Hey, let me share this picture of my family and kind of talk about that. Another thing too, in terms of beating online fatigue, is letting them be in the driver's seat. So letting them lead the activity, letting them be the teacher, and I'll update that. That's another one that I use often, but letting them run the game. So having them say, hey, you get to be in charge today. And I know we do that a lot. We're in person. Sometimes when we're online, it feels like we have to control everything, but letting them know, hey, you're going to lead Simon Says, these are the rules, this is what you need to do. Wearing cute or silly headbands or accessories, having spirit weeks, those are great. Even in my adult meetings, I will have times where we put on sunglasses, wear, a favorite shirt, or, do something silly like that, or a crazy hair day, or wear a hat. All of those things are different things, because really, again, the part of that fatigue is just making those connections, shifting. If all day they had to sit and they couldn't be silly, all day they had to sit and they, had to focus and they weren't allowed to wear any headgear. It's like, well, how can we shift after school? Even if we are doing work, even if we do have expectations of them to do projects, what can we do to be silly? So if they don't have a hat, let's make a hat. Or, you get on screen and you have a hat on your head, or, things like that. So anything that's getting them to kind of shift out of the normal pattern of what they've been doing, something that's a little bit different, or maybe sometimes it's literally not even looking at the screen at all. It's like, today I'm okay with looking at the back of your heads, and that's okay. It's not disrespectful. It's giving you the break. It's giving you the space to do that. Thank you all for sharing that out. So we've talked a lot about different activities and things that we can do. And obviously we started out the conversation and the whole thing has been about being intentional. Okay. So being intentional, and you all shared in the chat, having that purpose, doing it with purpose, doing it with the end goal in mind. And that's really all that I wanted to take time to share out with today. It's just, sometimes it's just naming it. Sometimes it's just, saying, hey, let me make sure that we make these connections for these students. And sometimes it's just saying, let me make sure that every time I have a touch point with these students, that I am considering their social emotional learning, that I am considering their social emotional health, especially during a time like this. So again, when we think about being intentional, every single time we engage with these students, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 hours, how can we make sure that in the back of our mind, we're being purposeful about their social emotional learning and health? So that's what that means to me. I hope that some of these tools were useful in some of these games and things like that. And the last thing that I'm going to say in terms of being intentional with SEL is always consider the experts, right? So for me, these are my two main experts, because as I told you, I started out working with Wings for Kids when I was, 20 something, and I'm 40 now. And so they were kind of my starting place. And it was something that I was already engaged with, but I didn't have a name for it. So it was very exciting to work with them and to see how they've grown and to see how they've become like a national partner and provider in the social emotional learning space. And then of course we have, I'm missing a word there, but we have the collaborative that is really that academic base that gives you that content. So if you're looking for resources and you're not familiar with these two, you haven't checked out the collaborative, or you're not familiar with Wings for Kids, these are some of my go-to sources. These are, again, I got my work started out with Wings as a counselor, and then the collaborative is that academic piece. They've done a lot of research around it. So you can pull that information out and, say, okay, let me make these connections. Let me make these, let me see what the latest research is saying, activities, ideas, and just really it's about being intentional. So when we want to be intentional, of course, we want to get that most up-to-date research. We want to get, as many activities and ideas as we can. So these are some of the resources and experts that I use and that I engage with. And so consider that as you're thinking about engaging and being intentional. So just to close out, what we understand now more than ever is that soft skills are the foundation, ... I forgot the word, of everything. So soft skills are no longer really soft skills. They are hard skills. And especially now during this time, we've seen, and not only our kids, but adults, we know that depression is high. Even suicide rates, unfortunately, are higher. So this is something that is so critical and so crucial that we need to wrap, ourselves around our students. We need to wrap ourselves around our peers and each other. And so social emotional learning, when I go through these things and when I talk about these things, I'm not just preaching to the kids, I'm telling them, I use this too. I have self-talk phrases too. I get angry when, too. And so giving them that transparency and letting them know that we are using these tools as well and we need to grow as well is going to, help them to make that connection. And so we can use social emotional learning skills to help our keiki and our children to build a solid foundation for life. I really do believe that. I believe that my own social emotional skills and the things that I've had to endure, as a child, growing up poor and all those kind of things, those are the skills that helped me to be able to keep moving forward. It wasn't just, oh, I knew how to do math. It was that when I got stuck or when something went wrong or when, I couldn't do something I wanted to do, the social emotional skills, that's what helped to push me through and to keep me going. And so that's why it's so important and so critical to be intentional about social emotional learning after school. So I thank you all for joining me for this. I thank you, Paula and Hawaii After School, for providing me the opportunity to just share. Again, some of this stuff might not be new. And sometimes it's always nice to just reconnect, have a reminder, share out in the chat, and be intentional, right? So maybe you're already doing all of these things. Maybe you got a new idea that you can take away, or maybe it was just a break for you to to come away and kind of partner and think about how many people really want to be intentional about social emotional learning. So thank you again. I will be here In the background in the chat, if you have questions, I am going to send out this PowerPoint. I'm going to add a couple of things that I said that weren't in there for anybody who's interested. And, have a happy Aloha Friday to everybody, especially to my folks in Hawaii. And thank you. Thank you for letting me join you.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you for, thanks. That was very enjoyable and very interactive. So we thank you for that. And if you need to leave, we say thank you for coming. Please fill out the evaluation that's in the chat box. But if you have about 10 more minutes, we have Danielle from a Coalition for a Drug-Free Hawaii here to share their new resource, the online lending library. So if you have a minute, please be sure to stay for this great resource. But if not, thank you for coming and happy Friday.
Okay, so should I go ahead and get into it? Yeah?
Yes,
okay.
Go for it.
And just to preface this, I have the worst Zoom luck. So I'm sure someone is going to be mowing outside with a leaf blower. My dogs are going to bark. So sorry. It happens every single time that I get on to speak. But my name is Danielle, just like I was introduced. And I am from the Coalition for a Drug-Free Hawaii. And I specifically work within the Hawaii Prevention Resource Center. And the Hawaii Prevention Resource Center, if you're not familiar, is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's a resource center. So we have plenty of resources, and those span from pamphlets to posters and a full lending library, which is just a collection of books that range from topics on like raising, oh, there they go. I don't know if you can hear the dogs or not. But it ranges from like books that are geared towards little kids. It talks about, there's like stuff for psychology interests. There's stuff that helps with getting certifications and study guides, just tons of different books and resources that you can check out. And there's also a bunch of like wellness books, such as like the 12 Rules for Life and stuff like that. Anyway, so this resource, if you're not familiar with it, is a great resource for anyone in the prevention field or just anyone really. But because of COVID, obviously we haven't been able to have any patrons come in. And so we wanted to expand our reach. And so we started using an online platform called Libib or Libib, not sure how it's pronounced. But it's an online library, and it's pretty much exactly what you would expect. It has all of our books in it, and you can place holds on them so that I can check them out to you. And it's basically our entire library online. So it's a really great resource, and I'll show you a bit of it in a minute. But the reason I'm trying to share this all with you guys is that we want to introduce this to the public, and we want to get this out to all of our patrons. But we want to first introduce it to our trusted partners and the people that we know will give us honest feedback and we know will benefit from the online library. And so you are a group that we really wanted to share it with first. And so I'm going to share my screen so that I can kind of show you and walk through the process of how to use it, because it is a little bit complicated. And the reason it's so complicated is just to protect both the lending library as well as our patrons. Libib is something that tons of people use, and it's also something that can be used just as a sharing type site of like, look, I've read these books and these are my ratings for these books. So we had to make it more secure than what is the basic, I guess you could say, and that's where the complication of getting a password and getting an account with it comes in. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'll just go ahead and share my PowerPoint. And thank you all for staying. This shouldn't take too long. So, this one, share. Okay, and I'm not going to start the PowerPoint because it's really short and this is really all you need to see. So, these are the steps, and I know it looks like a lot, I really do. But these are the steps to access our lending library. So the first one would be to fill out a borrower's agreement on our website. Soon, it's not up yet, but soon we will have a page completely dedicated to the online lending library, and this step will be a lot easier. But for now, let me show you where to find the borrower's agreement. So the borrower's agreement is on our highprc808.org website, and it is under, if I can show you the little bars up there. Okay, it's under lending library, under services, and then it's all the way at the bottom. It's the borrower's agreement, and you just fill this out. And this information is going to give me a couple of key things that I need to know. So it's going to give me obviously your name, but it's going to give me your email address and the address to where I can send a book to. So the email address is going to be what I make your account under in LaBib. And then the address down here is going to be where I send the books whenever you check them out. So having this up front is going to help me to where I can just, as soon as you request it, I can go to the lending library, send it out to you, and you get your resources quickly, instead of the current process, which takes a lot longer. There's a lot more communication back and forth, and this just really streamlines things. So anyway, you fill that out. That's going to come to my email. No one else is going to see it, just me. And then I am going to create you an account. So that was that first step. This next step, after you send me the borrower's agreement, I will create, or I will give you access. I'm not really creating an account for you. I'm just putting your name and email address into an account so that you have access. So once you receive a confirmation email from me saying, you know, yes, I've created it, you can go ahead and access, I'm going to provide you with these instructions. And these instructions, I'll go through them and then show you how to do it. It's a lot longer on paper than it is in reality. So you just go to the link provided, you go to the library login screen, and then you're going to click need password. Once this is clicked, you enter the email that you provided on the borrower's agreement, because that's the email I used to grant you access. And then from there, you'll receive an automatically generated, so it's pretty immediate, you'll receive an automatically generated email that will send you a temporary password. You enter that password, you go in, you change your password to something that you remember. So I know it's a lot, I really do, and I keep saying that, but let me show you real quick. So you're gonna click need password, type in your email, and then you're gonna go through the steps that I mentioned just a second ago. Now, the reason that we do this is because no one can just enter an email and get a password. You have to enter an email that I have already granted access to. And that is just so that we don't get people all over the country trying to check out books and then us having to tell them no, or accidentally mailing a book to Kansas. So this really just kind of protects us. And so it also protects us from people, just it also protects the patrons, because you know that there's only like trusted people or people that we have granted access to this site. Anyway, let me go back. So I sign in, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So it is, as I said, basically what you would expect from an online library. It has all of our books that we have, and I'm not going to scroll through all of them because we have quite a few of them. You can search the title, you can search by topic, you can, let me move this over. You can, yeah, that's it. You can search by topic and title and author and all of the same things that you would be able to search any online system, really. And then you're going to click on a book, and it is going to give you a little description of the book, and it's going to, over here, it'll say add a hold. Let me pick up what this not checked out. So here's this one. So it'll tell you if there's any available. You're going to say, oh, look, there's one available. I can have this one. And then you're going to put it on hold. Then Once it's on hold, you can exit out of that, and down here you'll see it in your little like cart, and then you're just going to press complete. Once you press complete and submit, I will get an email saying that you want that book, and then I will check it out to you and mail it to you. It's that simple, and then you can either return it at our office on Nimitz and just drop it in our little Dropbox, or you can mail it back to us. Both are perfectly fine with us, but one is free to you. So, but if you're on a different island, then mailing is the appropriate option. So I know that was a whole lot of information, and I'm so thankful that you guys listened. I really hope, let me stop sharing. I really hope that some of you take advantage of this resource, or at least just create an account and explore our library to know what we do have, because we do have a lot, and we have a lot of resources that could definitely benefit anybody in prevention, after school, all that good stuff. So again, I know that was a lot, and I know it was a lot in a small amount of time. I believe Jen will email out the PowerPoint that I just showed you, so it has those steps written out. It also has my email in it, so if anyone has any questions or any concerns or any suggestions, then please email me and let me know. Like I said, we haven't really shared this with the public too widely. We've shared it with our organization and a couple of other people, but we really haven't shared it out. And so we need as much feedback and input as we can get, as well as we need to start, testing it out and testing out the system and getting people in the system. So does anyone have any questions? Again, I'm sorry for throwing so much at y'all all at once. If anyone has any questions.
Just quick question, Danielle. So it's open to everyone on all islands, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not the mainland.
No, that's fine, but because I still have people, on all the islands and stuff like that, so I'm definitely going to share, but I just wanted to be sure. But this is awesome. I wish, it was for the mainland, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody out there has it too. Like, we can't be the only resource center that has their stuff online, but especially at this point. But yeah, please share it, and do know that we also, it's all free. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we also have pamphlets. I know I breezed by that, but if you guys are working with students and you want to pass out pamphlets on healthy relationships or on marijuana in grades, reach out to me and I can send you some of those pamphlets as well. We haven't been sending out very many pamphlets at all, so it's going to benefit us, it's going to benefit you, and we're going to be putting those pamphlets to use because right now they're just sitting on a shelf. So that's another great resource aside from the lending library.
Thank you, Danielle, and thank you, Cam. So yes, we're really thankful for everybody who came, and thankful for all your great resources that you shared. Once again, if you have a quick minute, please fill out our feedback form, and that link is in the chat twice now. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays. We'll see you soon.